AITA for listing our house after my wife told me I was no longer welcome home. I'm Edward, 39, and by the time Cassandra sent that text, we had been married for 8 years. We were not one of those couples who screamed every night or threw plates at walls. Most of our marriage looked normal from the outside. 2 coffee mugs by the sink, 1 shared calendar on the fridge, her throw blanket permanently on the couch, and my shoes lined up by the garage door because she hated clutter. That was part of the problem. From the outside, we looked stable enough that people believed Cassandra when she started saying I was the cold one. The change had been gradual. About a year earlier, Cassandra had started using the word space whenever I asked a question she did not want to answer. If friends showed up at our house on a weeknight without either of us discussing it first, she needed space from my rigidity. If the joint card balance jumped by more than $1,000 in 2 weeks, she needed space from my financial monitoring. If she disappeared for most of a Saturday and came home after midnight without answering her phone, she needed space from my interrogation. I did not track her location. I did not tell her who she could see. I did not demand passwords. Most of my questions were ordinary married person questions. Are 6 people staying for dinner? What was the $400 charge? Should I keep waiting up? But Cassandra had developed a way of looking at me like every question contained an accusation. One night, after I noticed a large charge from a boutique she had never mentioned, I asked if it was hers. She kept cutting vegetables with quick, hard motions. Why does everything have to become a financial audit with you? Because we agreed not to put personal purchases over $500 on that card without talking first. It was $620. I know. She dropped the knife onto the cutting board. That tone. That's what I mean. What tone? The one where you make me feel like I'm 12. I should have stayed with the actual issue. Instead, I apologized for how I sounded. She cried, and the charge remained on the card. That pattern repeated often enough that I began questioning my own timing, wording, and facial expression before I brought up anything difficult. I told myself that was compromise. Cassandra learned something different. If she looked wounded enough, I would retreat. I thought I was giving her room to breathe. She thought I was practicing how to disappear on command. The house became part of the argument, too. I had bought it 3 years before we married. The deed and mortgage were in my name, though marital money had gone toward normal expenses and improvements after the wedding. I never used ownership as a threat. Cassandra chose paint colors, replaced fixtures, filled the backyard with planters, and treated the upstairs guest room as her personal project space. When she wanted comfort or reassurance, it was our home. When I questioned a purchase or asked whether another overnight guest was really necessary, it became your house. You always get the final say because it's technically yours. I didn't say that. You don't have to. It's hanging over everything. Then, 2 days later, she would send me links to expensive patio furniture with the message, "This would look perfect in our backyard." I kept trying to solve the contradiction with patience. Cassandra also began describing me differently to other people. I first noticed it in small comments. At dinner with friends, someone joked that Cassandra could talk anyone into anything. She laughed and said, "Not Edward. He doesn't yell. He just makes the whole room feel judged." People smiled because she smiled. I smiled too. Later, in the car, I asked, "Do I make you feel judged?" She stared out the window. "You make everything so serious." "I'm asking because you said it in front of everyone." It was a joke. This is exactly what I mean. Another time, I walked into the kitchen while she was on speakerphone with her mother, Fiona. "I just don't know how to reach him anymore," Cassandra was saying. She saw me and took the phone off speaker. That night, she told me the conversation had been about my habit of withdrawing during arguments. When I reminded her that I usually went quiet because she asked for space, she said I was twisting her words. Shared friends started acting careful around me. Not hostile exactly. More like they were waiting for a version of me they had been warned about. Then Miles came back into her life. Cassandra had known him years before we met. He was an old friend from a wider social circle, someone she described as impulsive, funny, and impossible to take too seriously. At first, I heard his name once every few weeks. Miles had sent her a ridiculous video. Miles remembered a restaurant they used to like. Miles said she had not changed at all. Then his name started appearing in conversations that were supposedly about me. Miles thinks couples should have separate lives. Miles says people become resentful when they confuse marriage with ownership. The third time she said something like that, I set my fork down. That's a strange thing to say to your husband. She gave me a tired look. You're threatened by anyone who understands me. I'm asking why another man's opinion is suddenly part of every disagreement we have. He's my friend. Then let him be your friend. Stop using him as a witness against me. She pushed away from the table and said she needed space. Around the same time, our 8th anniversary was approaching. Cassandra wanted a formal party instead of the quiet dinner we had originally discussed. She said 8 years deserved a reset, and that we needed to remind people we were still committed. The word people bothered me more than committed comforted me. Still, I agreed. The venue required a deposit, then additional payments for catering, rentals, flowers, and a small audio setup. Cassandra managed the details and used the joint card for some of it. I handled a few deposits directly because the card was close to its limit after several of her other purchases. She told me there would be a short toast, a photo display, and a couple's activity that she said would be corny but harmless. A week before the party, I ordered a small anniversary gift. It was not extravagant, just a restored print connected to the place where we had our first real date. I had to pick it up from the framer late because the shop had corrected a flaw in the matting. That was why I was still out at 10:43 on a Thursday night. The wrapped print was lying on the passenger seat when Cassandra's message appeared. Don't come home tonight. I want to know what the house feels like without you. I read it twice. My first instinct was to call. My thumb was already over her name when I stopped. The wording felt wrong. Not emotional. Not impulsive. Composed. She did not say we needed time to cool down. We had not even been fighting when I left. She had kissed the air near my cheek and told me to text when I was on my way back. Now she wanted to know what the house felt like without me. I typed, "What happened?" Then deleted it. I typed, "Is someone there?" Then deleted that too. Finally, I replied, "Understood." The read receipt appeared almost immediately. No answer followed. I pulled into the parking lot of a hotel about 15 minutes away. I had not decided whether I was staying there. I just knew driving home after being explicitly told not to come back could be turned into something ugly if Cassandra wanted it to be. 12 minutes after I parked, a bank notification appeared. A pending charge for $286.40 at a specialty grocery and beverage delivery service. We had groceries at home. Cassandra had told me she was spending the evening alone. I opened the card app. The charge had been placed minutes after her text. Before I could decide what that meant, my doorbell camera sent another notification. Someone was at the front door? The thumbnail showed a man in a dark jacket with one hand in his pocket and a bottle-shaped paper bag under his arm. Miles. I opened the clip. He walked up, rang once, and looked toward the street. Cassandra opened the door in less than 10 seconds. She was wearing the soft gray sweater she usually wore around the house. She smiled before he said anything and stepped aside. The clip ended as he walked in. I watched it once. Then I saved it and forced myself not to play it again. Every angry version of myself arrived at the same time. Drive home. Walk in. Demand an answer. Make sure neither of them could pretend this was innocent. Instead, I called Graham. He answered on the 4th ring, sounding half asleep. What's wrong? I told him exactly what had happened, beginning with the text and ending with the camera clip. He was quiet for a few seconds. Where are you? Hotel parking lot. Good. Stay there. I could be home in 15 minutes. Do not drive over there angry. I'm not going to hit anyone. I know. That's not the only way this can go bad. Do not give her a scene she can turn into evidence. Save the clip. Save the text. Say nothing you would hate hearing read back later. I leaned my forehead against the steering wheel. She told me not to come home, and then he showed up. I heard you. What am I supposed to do? Just accept that? No. You're supposed to survive tonight without doing something stupid. Calm is not weakness. Tonight, calm is evidence. That sentence got through to me. I booked a room using my personal card, carried the wrapped anniversary print inside, and set it face down on the desk. I did not sleep. A little after midnight, Cassandra posted a close-up photo to her social media. 2 wine glasses sat on our kitchen counter beside a bowl of olives and a candle I had bought for her birthday. The caption read, "Finally breathing." There was no person in the photo, only enough suggestion to invite questions. At 12:18, a shared friend named Denise texted me. Cassandra said you left her alone tonight. What happened? I stared at the message for a long time. Then I wrote, Cassandra asked me in writing not to come home. I'm respecting that request. Denise did not answer. That was when I realized Cassandra had started the movie before I knew I was in it. I went through our recent messages. For months, she had been using phrases that sounded casual at the time, but looked different when placed together. Maybe we need a trial separation. I need to know I can exist without your approval. Sometimes leaving is the only way a person gets heard. But whenever I had asked what a trial separation would actually mean, where we would stay, how money would work, whether we were both free to date, she accused me of being cold and contractual. You always make emotions into paperwork, she had said. Now I understood why she resisted terms. Terms would bind her too. At 1:07 a.m., I opened the email account connected to our shared calendar. I searched the anniversary venue. Most of the messages were ordinary confirmations. Catering count, deposit receipt, audio setup, a note about the couple's activity. Then I found an email Cassandra had sent the venue coordinator that afternoon. She asked whether the toast section could be expanded to include what she called a marriage reflection focused on distance, repair, and grace. She also asked whether a chair could be placed beside the small stage in case Edward becomes overwhelmed and prefers not to participate. I read that line several times. Nothing had happened yet, and she had already made room for my reaction. The party was not a celebration. It was a stage. I pictured Cassandra standing in front of our friends and relatives, talking about how hard the year had been, how lonely she felt, how gracious she was for trying again. If I objected, I would confirm that I was defensive. If I stayed quiet, I would confirm that I was emotionally absent. If I apologized publicly, she would get exactly what she wanted. A reset in which I began as the guilty party. At 7:02 the next morning, Cassandra called. I let it ring. At 7:04, she called again. Then the text started. Where are you? Are you seriously not coming home? Edward, answer me. So you really abandoned me? That last one told me everything I needed to know. She had ordered me out. Miles had arrived. She had posted about finally breathing. By morning, I was the husband who abandoned her. I replied with one sentence. You instructed me not to come home at 10:43 p.m. I complied. Her response came immediately. That's not the point. I did not answer. Fiona left a voicemail 10 minutes later. Edward, I don't know what game you think you're playing, but Cassandra needed compassion last night, not punishment. A real husband does not leave his wife alone when she is struggling. Call her. Fix this before you do more damage. I saved the voicemail. She said, alone, with such confidence that I wondered whether she knew Miles had been there. I showered, put on yesterday's clothes, and went down to the hotel lobby with my laptop. I bought bad coffee and began reviewing our finances. It was not one wild charge. It was a trail. There was a rideshare receipt from 2 weeks earlier on a night Cassandra said Fiona had picked her up. The destination was a hotel lounge. There were 3 restaurant charges on evenings. She claimed she was at book club. There was a hotel bar charge for $174. She had described it as planning drinks with the anniversary coordinator, but the venue had its own bar, and the date did not match any planning appointment. There was a deposit for a private service connected to the anniversary venue. Cassandra had told me it was part of the couple's activity. The invoice described a solo photography package and styling consultation. Then I found a canceled reservation for the couple's activity itself. She had removed it 6 days earlier. The money had been shifted to her private add-on. I opened the joint account and saw 2 transfers to the card made from money we had earmarked for property taxes and insurance. Not enough to endanger either bill, but enough to show she had been covering personal spending with shared funds and hoping the next deposits would hide it. At 8:30, I called Graham again. He was fully awake this time. You need a lawyer before you touch anything major, he said. I want the card frozen. Ask what you can legally restrict. Don't cut utilities. Don't empty accounts. Don't lock her out. I'm not trying to make her homeless. Good. Make sure every action proves that. By 9 o'clock, I had a consultation scheduled with a family lawyer for late morning. Before the call, I gathered the deed, mortgage records, account statements, insurance documents, and the premarital closing file. The lawyer listened without reacting much. That was reassuring. When I finished, she said, First, Do not return to the house without a plan if you believe a confrontation is likely. Second, do not remove your wife's access to ordinary necessities. Third, you can protect income and restrict new discretionary debt attached to your credit, but document what you are doing and why. What about the house? She reviewed the basic ownership history I provided and asked several questions about improvements and marital contributions. The title position gives you authority to begin a listing process, she said. That does not mean you can ignore any marital claims or occupancy rights. Listing is not the same as completing a sale. You need proper notice, and we need to handle the rest carefully. I understand. Do you? Yes. Because protecting assets is not the same as punishing someone. The faster you move, the cleaner your reasoning needs to be. I started discussing a possible sale with a realtor months ago. We had photos taken when Cassandra was visiting her mother. I never activated the listing. Why did you prepare it? Because this marriage has felt unstable for a while. I kept hoping preparation would be unnecessary. The lawyer paused. Then notify. Do not threaten. That became my rule for the day. Notify. Do not threaten. Months earlier, after one particularly bad argument in which Cassandra told me the house had never felt like hers, I had spoken with a realtor named Beth. I wanted to understand what selling would look like if we separated. Beth had arranged preliminary photos and prepared a draft listing, but I put everything on hold when Cassandra promised we would work on the marriage. I emailed Beth. Please activate the listing process. Confirm what notices and signatures you need from me, and coordinate with my attorney before scheduling access. She called within 5 minutes. You're sure? Yes, it's time. The photos are still usable, but I need to verify a few details. Do that, and no surprise showings. Everything goes through written notice. Her voice stayed neutral. I'll send the listing authorization and timeline. Next, I called the anniversary venue. The coordinator sounded confused. Mrs. Cassandra emailed yesterday about adjusting the program. I know. I'm canceling the event. You'll lose part of the deposit. I understand. May I ask whether you want to reschedule instead? No. She hesitated. I'll send the cancellation form. When it arrived, I signed it. The non-refundable amount hurt. Not because we could not absorb it, but because I knew how much time and money had gone into building a public display that was never meant to protect both of us. I was not going to pay for a room full of people to applaud a marriage she had already turned into a prop. Then I called the bank. I did not empty the joint account. I did not transfer Cassandra's money. I moved my future direct deposit to my personal account and requested dual approval for large outgoing transfers from the joint account where available. On the credit card, Cassandra was an authorized user. I paid the current balance from the funds already set aside for it, then froze new charges while I requested a lower limit and replacement card number. I kept a separate account available for documented household necessities. I sent Cassandra an email, copying my lawyer. You instructed me in writing not to return to the house last night. I complied. I have not abandoned the residence or the marriage. Because of recent unauthorized discretionary spending and conflicting statements about our relationship, new non-essential charges on the joint credit card are paused. Necessary shared expenses will continue to be handled transparently. The anniversary event has been canceled. The house has entered the listing process. All access, notices, and property decisions will follow legal guidance. From this point forward, communication about money, the home, or separation needs to be in writing. I stared at the email for a full minute before sending it. Then I sent one text. I'm no longer financing confusion. At 11:36, Beth confirmed the listing was live. The photos looked almost too peaceful. Sunlight across the hardwood floor. The clean kitchen island. Cassandra's planters lined up in the backyard. Our bedroom made anonymous by white bedding and careful angles. The description called it warm, well-maintained, and ready for its next chapter. I almost laughed. Cassandra found the listing 9 minutes later. My phone began ringing. The first few calls were angry. Then came texts. You put our house online. What the hell is wrong with you? You canceled the party? My card isn't working. Edward, answer me right now. By the 20th call, she had shifted. Please pick up. You're scaring me. We can talk about this. By the 40th, Fiona was calling too. By By the 56th, Cassandra sent a photo of the wrapped anniversary print, which I had forgotten to remove from the hotel room before checking out. Then I realized it was not the same package. She had photographed the empty spot on the shelf where she expected the gift to sit, as if absence itself were evidence. Call 6-1 came at 12:24 p.m. I let it end. Then she called again. I answered. What did you do? Her voice was tight and breathless. I sent you an email. You listed our house. I began the process. You froze me out financially. I paused new non-essential charges on a card attached to my credit. Necessary expenses remain covered. You canceled our anniversary. Yes. You did all of this because I asked for one night of space. No. Then why? Because you told me not to come home. Miles arrived 38 minutes later, and by breakfast you were telling people I abandoned you. Silence. Then, you were watching the house. The doorbell camera sent an alert. It is our normal security system. He stopped by at 11:30 at night with a bottle. Nothing happened. I did not say what happened. You're acting insane. That word is exactly why I'm keeping this conversation short. She exhaled sharply. You wanted to scare me. Just admit it. I wanted to protect myself. By putting my home up for sale? You call it my house whenever you want me to feel guilty for owning it. You call it our home when you want me to pay for it and leave on command. That's cruel. What was the plan for the anniversary speech? She went quiet again. I don't know what you're talking about. I have the email. You went through my private messages? It was sent through the event account connected to our shared calendar. That was about healing. You prepared a chair in case I became overwhelmed before you even created the conflict. You always make everything sound calculated. I think we're done talking for now. If you hang up, you're proving my point. No, Cassandra. I'm ending a phone call that is going in circles. Put anything important in writing. I ended the call. My hands shook afterward. Not dramatically, just enough that I had to set the phone down. For 8 years, hanging up would have felt cruel. That day, it felt like refusing a script. That afternoon, Denise called me. I owe you an apology, she said. You don't owe me anything. I repeated something I shouldn't have repeated. What did Cassandra tell you? That you stormed out after she asked to talk about the marriage. She said you refused to tell her where you were and used silence to scare her. I did not storm out. I was already away from the house. I know. She sent us the story before midnight. Then you sent me that text saying she told you not to come back. Who is US? A few people, not a big group. I did not argue about whether that counted as a group. Denise continued. There are screenshots you should see. I don't want to be involved, but I also don't think it's right for you to walk into whatever she's planning without knowing. She forwarded several images from individual message threads. In one, Cassandra had written to Fiona at 9:58 p.m., 45 minutes before texting me. I'm going to make him leave tonight. I need him to understand what it feels like when I stop accommodating him. Fiona replied. Be calm. Don't let him provoke you. If he chooses to walk out, that is on him. Another screenshot came from a conversation Cassandra had apparently forwarded to Denise while seeking support. It contained messages with Miles. Miles, if he leaves on his own, nobody can say you kicked him out. Cassandra, he'll come crawling back by breakfast. He always does. Miles, then you decide what version you want. Cassandra, I want the party to happen. People need to see that I tried. Miles, just don't make me part of the speech. Cassandra, you won't be. The timestamps were from the afternoon before she sent me away. My stomach dropped, not because I had suspected none of it, but because suspicion still leaves room for mercy. A screenshot does not. There was one more exchange. Cassandra, after the party, he'll agree to counseling if everyone sees how patient I've been. Miles, and if he doesn't? Cassandra, then he looks like the one who gave up. I thanked Denise and asked her to keep the original messages. I'm sorry, she said again. So am I. I forwarded the screenshots to my lawyer and added them to a written timeline. 10:43 p.m. Cassandra instructs me not to return. 11:21 p.m. Miles enters the residence. 12:03 a.m. Cassandra posts, finally breathing. 12:18 a.m. Shared friend asks why I left Cassandra alone. 7:19 a.m. Cassandra accuses me of abandonment. The timeline was not dramatic. That was why it was powerful. It did not need adjectives. Cassandra sent an email that evening. Miles came over because I was upset and did not feel safe being alone. Your decision to monitor the house, freeze shared funds, and list our home proves why I needed support. You are escalating a private disagreement into financial intimidation. I replied, you did not tell me you felt unsafe. You told me you wanted to know what the house felt like without me. You arranged for Miles to arrive after instructing me not to return, then represented to others that I left voluntarily after a conflict. I did not freeze shared funds. I paused new discretionary charges on a credit account for which I am responsible. Essential expenses remain available and documented. The listing process will follow legal guidance. Please keep future communication factual. Her response was only one sentence. You make marriage sound like a lawsuit. I did not reply. Over the next 2 days, Fiona left 6 voicemails. In the first, she called me rash. In the second, she said Cassandra was having panic attacks. In the third, she said a real husband did not punish his wife financially. In the fourth, she accused me of trying to leave Cassandra without basic security, though Cassandra still had access to food, transportation, household funds, and her own personal account. In the fifth, she said Cassandra needed compassion, not a realtor. The sixth was quieter. Edward, this is getting out of hand. Come to my house Sunday afternoon. No lawyers. No documents. Just a calm family conversation. I almost ignored it. Then Cassandra emailed separately. Please come Sunday. I want us to speak calmly with Mom present, so neither of us feels attacked. I forwarded both messages to my lawyer. She advised me not to discuss settlement terms and to leave if the meeting became hostile. Graham offered to come with me, but I declined. I did not want the room to divide into teams before anyone spoke. Sunday afternoon, I arrived at Fiona's house 5 minutes early. There were 6 cars outside. So much for a calm family conversation. When Fiona opened the door, she wore the expression of someone greeting a difficult contractor. Everyone is here because they care, she said. This was supposed to be you, Cassandra, and me. People who love Cassandra deserve to understand what you did. The living room had been arranged like an intervention. Cassandra sat on the couch with tissues in her lap. Fiona took the chair beside her. Denise was not there, but 2 shared friends were. Cassandra's older cousin, an aunt, and another couple we knew had also been invited. Miles was absent. I stayed near the doorway. Cassandra looked pale and carefully exhausted. No makeup except enough to make her look like she was not wearing any. Thank you for coming, she said. I came for a private conversation. Fiona raised a hand. No one is here to attack you. I glanced around the room. Then why is there an audience? One of the shared friends, Aaron, shifted in his seat. We're worried about both of you. Fiona gestured toward an empty chair facing the couch. Sit down, Edward. I remained standing for another second, then sat. I did not want them to later say I had arrived threatening anyone. Cassandra began. I asked Edward for one night to breathe. I was overwhelmed. I felt like I could not move in my own home without being questioned. Instead of giving me space with compassion, he disappeared, froze me financially, canceled our anniversary, and put the house up for sale to scare me. The room was quiet. She dabbed at one eye. I woke up and realized he was trying to erase my whole life because I asked for one boundary. Her aunt shook her head. That is not how a husband handles conflict. Aaron looked at me. Listing the house overnight is extreme. It was not sold overnight, I said. The listing process began using preparations made months ago. Fiona cut in. That is not the point. I looked at her. I've heard that phrase several times this week. Cassandra's face tightened. You see, he does this. He turns everything into technical language so nobody can talk about feelings. I let her continue. She said I had become controlling about money. She said I watched her spending because I resented her independence. She said she invited Miles over because she was afraid to be alone after I walked away. Then Fiona spoke for nearly 5 minutes about marriage, duty, compassion, and the danger of using property as a weapon. When she finished, Cassandra's cousin asked me whether I had anything to say. Yes. I took out my phone and a single printed timeline. Not a thick folder. Not a dramatic stack. 1 page with dates and times, plus the original records available on my phone. Since I was invited here to answer public accusations, I'm going to answer them publicly. Cassandra sat straighter. Edward, don't. You said I abandoned you. I said it felt like abandonment. To other people, you said I stormed out after a fight. She looked at Fiona. This is what he does. He cross-examines me. I opened the screenshot of her 10:43 message and held the phone where the nearest people could read it. Don't come home tonight. I want to know what the house feels like without you. Aaron leaned forward. I continued. I was not at home when this was sent. We were not in an argument. I replied, understood. Cassandra shook her head. You knew I was emotional. You had already told your mother you were going to make me leave. Fiona's head snapped toward me. That was a private conversation. I pulled up the screenshot and read only the relevant line. I'm going to make him leave tonight. The aunt looked at Cassandra. Did you write that? Cassandra's mouth opened, then closed. Fiona answered for her. She was desperate. I looked at Fiona. You replied that if I chose to walk out, it was on me. I was already outside the house. Cassandra had not asked me to discuss anything. She instructed me not to return. This should have stayed between husband and wife, Fiona said. Then you should not have invited an audience for a lie. No one moved. Cassandra's voice dropped. You're enjoying this. No. You wanted this moment. I wanted the truth to remain private. You made the false version public. I pulled up the doorbell still. This is Miles arriving at our house 38 minutes after I was told not to come home. The image showed the timestamp clearly. One of the friends said, Cassandra told us he came because she was upset after Edward left. He was already planning to come, I said. Cassandra gripped the tissues. You don't know that. I opened the messages Denise had sent. If he leaves on his own, nobody can say you kicked him out. The room changed. It was not dramatic. No one gasped. People simply stopped arranging their faces into sympathy. I read Cassandra's answer. He'll come crawling back by breakfast. He always does. Aaron looked at her. Did you say that before you told him not to come home? Cassandra did not answer. Fiona's voice became sharp. Who gave you those messages? That is not relevant. It absolutely is. No. What matters is whether they are real. Cassandra stood. This is humiliating. I stayed seated. You accused me of financial abuse in front of everyone here. Because you froze the card. I paid the existing balance and paused new discretionary charges. You still had access to essentials. The card records showed hotel drinks, ride shares, restaurants, and event add-ons you misrepresented. You had no right to go through everything. It was a joint account and a credit card attached to my name. You wanted to punish me. I wanted to stop funding a story in which I was both the villain and the bank. Her aunt looked down at her hands. I showed the venue email next. Cassandra had asked for a marriage reflection about distance, repair, and grace before she created the night she later planned to describe. She had reserved a chair in case I became overwhelmed. She had canceled the couple's activity and moved the money to a solo styling and photography package. Aaron read the email over my shoulder. What exactly was going to happen at the party? Cassandra folded her arms. It was supposed to be honest. Honest about what? I asked. The conflict you had not staged yet. I did not stage anything. I opened the final screenshot. After the party, he'll agree to counseling if everyone sees how patient I've been. Then he looks like the one who gave up. Cassandra's face crumpled. You are making me look like a monster. I'm not making you look like anything. She started crying harder. I asked for one night. One night. And you destroyed everything. No. You asked me not to come home so you could create evidence that I left. Then you planned to use our anniversary party to present yourself as the forgiving wife. That's your interpretation. The timestamps are not an interpretation. Fiona stood and pointed toward my phone. Enough. Put that away. I did. Not because she had authority over me, but because I had shown what I came to show. Cassandra sank back onto the couch. Do you know how cruel this is? I looked at her for a long moment. You wanted everyone to believe I abandoned the marriage. The problem is, you put the instructions in writing. She wiped her face. Miles was just supporting me. Then why did he help plan how my leaving would look? He was talking hypothetically. He arrived with a bottle after you ordered me out. Nothing happened. Maybe nothing physical happened. That is no longer the only issue. The aunt looked at Fiona. Did you know Miles was coming? Fiona's silence answered before her words did. I knew Cassandra did not want to be alone. I nodded. So when you left me a voicemail accusing me of leaving her alone, you knew she wasn't. Fiona's face reddened. She needed emotional safety. You used the word alone because it made me sound worse. You are twisting this. No, I'm reading it back. One of the friends stood. I don't think I should be here. Please, Cassandra said. Don't leave. He gave her an uncomfortable look. You told us Edward walked out after scaring you. That's not what these messages show. I was scared. Of what? Cassandra looked at me as if I should provide the answer. I did not. The friend left. The other couple followed a minute later, mumbling that they hoped we worked things out. They did not apologize. They did not need to. Their discomfort said enough. Cassandra stared at me. You got what you wanted. I wanted not to be lied about. You canceled everything before talking to me. You did not want a conversation. You wanted me gone for the night and apologetic by morning. You could have come home. You told me not to. A normal husband would have known I didn't mean it literally. That is the trap, Cassandra. If I came home, I violated your boundary. If I stayed away, I abandoned you. Either way, you got the story you wanted. For the first time that afternoon, nobody interrupted me. I stood. The anniversary party is canceled. The card restrictions stay in place. The house listing remains active while the legal process determines what happens next. All financial and property communication stays in writing. So that's it. 8 years and you're done. 8 years is exactly why I know this was not one bad night. She began crying again. Will you at least go to counseling? I will attend one structured session to discuss separation and whether there is any honest basis for repair. The conditions are full financial disclosure, no contact with Miles, correction of the story you told people, and no more private planning about how to make me look unstable. Fiona scoffed. You hear that? Conditions. Contracts. Control. I turned to her. Boundaries sound like control to people who were comfortable when I had none. Then I left. My phone rang before I reached the car. Cassandra. I did not answer. A text followed. You embarrassed me in front of my family. I replied once. You invited them to judge me using a false story. After that, I drove away. Miles disappeared quickly. 2 days after the meeting, Cassandra forwarded me a message from him, apparently to prove that she had ended contact. I didn't think this would turn into a whole legal thing. I care about you, but I didn't sign up for this. Please leave me out of it. That was the first honest thing he contributed. He did not apologize to me. I did not expect him to. He stopped replying to Cassandra, removed himself from several social connections, and avoided anyone who might ask what he had been doing at my house late at night. Cassandra called his withdrawal betrayal. I called it predictable. The anniversary cancellation remained final. We lost part of the deposit. The venue returned the rest after deducting administrative and catering costs. Cassandra blamed me for wasting money. I reminded her that the original event had already become a personal performance financed through shared funds. The joint credit card stayed closed to new charges. Essential expenses were paid through a documented account both lawyers could track. Cassandra had access to groceries, medication, transportation, and ordinary household needs. What she no longer had was an open line of credit for hotel bars, private styling, unexplained rideshares, or a party built around my public confession. The listing stayed active, though the sale process moved more slowly than the hook makes it sound. There were notices, disclosures, discussions about marital contributions, and legal arguments about occupancy and proceeds. I did not lock Cassandra out. I did not remove her belongings. I did not show up with movers. I followed procedure. That frustrated her more than anger would have. Anger she knew how to use. Procedure gave her nothing dramatic to quote. All meaningful communication went through email. When she called to demand answers, I asked her to write. When Fiona sent messages about compassion, I saved them and did not debate. Some friends quietly backed away from Cassandra. Others stayed neutral because neutrality was easier than admitting they had helped spread a lie. A few continued defending her. One relative told me listing the house so quickly was emotionally violent. I told him the listing was a legal and financial step, not a physical eviction, and that I had prepared for it months before. He said, "It still feels cold." I said, "It probably does." I no longer needed every boundary to feel warm to the people who benefited from my silence. Denise apologized in person. We met for coffee in a place where neither Cassandra nor Fiona was likely to appear. I should have asked you before believing her, she said. You heard someone you cared about say she was afraid. She knew which words would make questions feel disloyal. That's true. Denise stared into her cup. She's telling people now that the messages were taken out of context. They were part of a timeline. I know. Some people will believe her anyway. I know that too. That was another change in me. I stopped trying to correct every person. The evidence was available to anyone Cassandra had directly recruited into the conflict. Beyond that, I did not need to run a campaign. I was ending a marriage, not running for office. Cassandra and I attended one counseling session 3 weeks later. The counselor asked each of us why we were there. Cassandra said, I want to understand why Edward responded to one request for space by dismantling our life. I said, I'm here to determine whether she can acknowledge that the request was part of a plan to make me appear to have left voluntarily. The counselor asked Cassandra whether the messages with Miles were authentic. She said they were emotionally authentic, but practically exaggerated. The counselor asked what that meant. Cassandra said, people say things when they're frustrated. Did you tell Edward not to come home because you expected him to return anyway? The counselor asked. Cassandra looked at me. I expected him to care enough to know I didn't mean it. The counselor waited. I said, that is the problem. Cassandra turned toward me. No, the problem is that you were ready to destroy everything. I had already prepared the listing months before because the marriage was unstable. So you were planning to leave me. I was preparing for the possibility. You hid that from me. You hid a coordinated plan to remove me for the night, invite Miles into the house, tell people I left after a fight, and use our anniversary to frame yourself as forgiving. I said nothing happened with Miles. You keep answering the smallest accusation because you cannot answer the larger one. She folded her arms. The counselor asked Cassandra whether she was willing to provide complete financial transparency, correct the abandonment story, in contact with Miles, and acknowledge that the anniversary program had been designed to pressure me publicly. Cassandra said she would consider a mutual correction if I admitted the house listing and card restriction were abusive. I said no. She turned to the counselor. See, he doesn't want repair. He wants surrender. I answered before the counselor could. I want one shared reality. Cassandra laughed without humor. Your reality. The one with timestamps. The session ended without an agreement. Outside, Cassandra followed me into the parking lot. So you really came here just to check a box. I came to see whether you could say, plainly, that you planned to make it look like I left. I was hurt. That is not an answer. You were cold for years. That may be something I need to own. It does not make your plan disappear. You never fought for me. I spent years trying to keep every conversation calm enough for you to stay. You mistook that for permission. She looked away. What happens now? The legal separation continues. You don't even sound sad. I am sad. I'm just not negotiating with sadness anymore. She flinched as if I had raised my voice. I had not. A week later, Cassandra sent a message to several people she had previously contacted. Denise forwarded it to me because Cassandra did not include me. I want to clarify that Edward did not leave the home after an argument. I asked him not to return that night. I was emotionally overwhelmed and communicated poorly. Some details were repeated before we had spoken, and I regret the confusion. It was not a full admission. She did not mention Miles. She did not mention the plan. She did not say she had lied. But she corrected the central claim. I had not abandoned her. That mattered, even if she did it for damage control. Fiona sent me one final text after the correction. You are not the man I thought you were. The old Edward would never have done this to Cassandra. I read it while standing in the kitchen early one morning. Only one mug sat beside the sink. Cassandra had moved most of her daily things to Fiona's house while the property process continued. Her throw blanket was gone from the couch. The shared calendar still hung on the fridge, but the anniversary date had been crossed out so heavily that the paper had torn. The restored print was still wrapped. I had retrieved it from the hotel and placed it in the closet for weeks because I could not decide what to do with it. That morning, I opened it. The image itself was beautiful. It showed a place that had once meant something uncomplicated to us. I did not destroy it. I returned it to the framer and asked whether the print could be donated or resold. He offered store credit. I declined. Then I went home and answered Fiona. "You're right. I'm not." I blocked her after that. The house eventually received an offer. The lawyers handled the questions about proceeds and marital contributions. Cassandra objected, negotiated, delayed, then signed the necessary agreements when it became clear that refusing would not restore the old arrangement. She rented a place she could afford on her own. I made sure her personal belongings were available on scheduled dates and that no essential property was withheld. She accused me twice of being clinical. Both times, I asked her to identify a specific practical issue in writing. She never did. The separation became final months later. There was no dramatic courtroom confession. No judge lectured Cassandra. Miles did not return to rescue her. Most people simply adjusted to the truth once the emotional excitement faded. Cassandra lost the anniversary stage, unrestricted access to shared credit, control over the house, and the version of events in which I had deserted her without warning. I lost a marriage I had spent years trying to preserve by making myself smaller inside it. The strangest part was how ordinary the end felt. Forms arrived. Accounts were divided. Keys were returned. I bought one new coffee mug because seeing the old pair every morning felt like living inside a photograph. Graham helped me move the last boxes after closing. As we stood in the empty living room, he looked around and said, "You okay?" "No." He nodded. "Better than you were?" "Yes." That was enough. I did not list the house because Cassandra wanted one night of space. I listed it because that night exposed the structure of our marriage. She wanted the freedom to remove me, the sympathy of saying I left, the comfort of keeping my home, and the money to finance whichever version of herself she needed. She expected me to come crawling back by breakfast. Instead, I stopped volunteering for the role. I didn't list the house to punish her. I listed it because she finally made me understand I was only welcome in our marriage when I was useful. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.